Central Floridians want more civility and compromise from elected officials. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. Last month, Central Florida Public Media convened a small group of people from across our coverage area to talk about politics and life this election season. The group of four, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and 1 independent, come from varying backgrounds but found common ground on many things, including what good leadership looks like.
True government and governing has bipartisan decisions. We may be in different parties, but I need your buy-in to it, or we're working to have a bipartisan decision.
We'll hear from the panel about the need for civility and compromise. That's ahead on The Wrap, the big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these headlines. A former Republican candidate for state attorney has filed a lawsuit against multiple GOP leaders and the incumbent prosecutor, Andrew Bain. As Central Florida Public Media's Marion Summerall reports, it's another twist in the contentious race for Florida's 9th judicial state attorney.
Thomas Fider alleges manipulation, fraud, and public corruption in what he calls a ghost candidate scheme. The lawsuit targets Republican leaders like Governor Ron DeSantis, former candidate Seth Hyman, other GOP leaders, and incumbent state attorney Andrew Bain. Hyman was endorsed by multiple GOP groups but dropped out shortly after winning. The race is now incumbent Andrew Bain running as an independent and Democrat Monique Worrell. Fider alleges the ghost candidate scheme was an attempt to tip the scales in Bain's favor.
Very clear. The governor wants to burst the blue bubble that is the 9th Judicial Circuit. And one of the ways he wants to do that is by taking control of powerful positions like the office of the state attorney.
Bain supports an investigation into the allegations. Marion Summerall, Central Florida Public Media.
The Osceola County School Board this week decided against forming a committee that would have come up with rules around allowing chaplains in schools there. As Central Florida Public Media's education reporter Danielle Pryor explains, this was the second consecutive meeting where the board has decided against the measure.
Board member John Arguello, who supports the measure, says he plans on bringing up the school chaplaincy program for a 3rd time at the next meeting. Dozens spoke both for and against the program during public comment.
The fact is, if your child, I have 5 kids, if one of my kids wanted to see a chaplain, they'd have to ask me for permission. I'd provide them a permission, and then they'd have an appointment. They already do it. They don't miss any school that they would. What's the difference between meeting with a chaplain and a guidance counselor?
Of the more than 70 school districts across the state, Miami-Dade County is the only one to implement a program. The law allowing chaplains to act as school counselors took effect July 1st. Danielle Pryor, Central Florida Public Media.
A tech billionaire has performed the first private spacewalk hundreds of miles above Earth. It was a high-risk endeavor reserved for professional astronauts until now. Tech entrepreneur Jared Isaacman teamed up with SpaceX to test the company's brand-new spacesuits on his chartered flight. Thursday's spacewalk also saw SpaceX engineer Sarah Gillis going out once Isaacman was safely back inside. The whole thing lasted less than 2 hours. The crew of 4 launched on Tuesday from Kennedy Space Center, rocketing farther from Earth than anyone since NASA's moonwalkers. More local news stories on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. What happens when 2 Central Florida strangers with differing political views sit down for a conversation, not to debate, but to find common ground? Central Florida Public Media is partnering with StoryCorps' One Small Step program to find out. Our first conversation aired this week. Listen back or sign up for your own conversation on our website. Visit cfpublic.org/onesmallstep. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump faced off in their first debate leading up to the presidential election in November. A few weeks ago, Central Florida Public Media brought together 4 people from different backgrounds to talk about how they're feeling this election season. In this segment of our series, we hear from 64-year-old David Walker, who is a registered independent who admittedly leans left, and 69-year-old Tom Unrath, who is a registered Republican. Neither of the two say they can support former President Trump. They spoke to Central Florida Public Media's news director, Latoya Dennis, and Morning Edition host, Talia Blake.
I grew up in 1960. And in 1960, a mother would say to her child, if you do right, be good, get good grades, stay out of trouble, one day you could grow up to become the president of the United States, right? Now, in reality, black mothers, they didn't say that to their sons, because back in the 60s, it was unimaginable for a young black man to ever become the president of the United States. But we all are familiar with that because it's very common. But even though it wasn't something that was spoken by black mothers, the message of it still has meaning. Do right, do good, get good grades, have good character, and one day you could become the president of the United States. I do not see that in at least one of the candidates that's running. I don't see that. I don't see character. Policies is one thing, but you have to have a sense of character about yourself, because if you have grandchildren, what are you telling your grandchildren? The things you're seeing, you will tell your grandchild, don't do that. But that's the guy who you're supposed to tell your grandchild, I want you to be like that person. But you can't say that today. So that's why I say, give me the issues, give me the policies, but I'm also going to look at your behavior and your character, your respect for one another. In political fights, I understand. We're going to argue back and forth. I think you would talk about being competitive. Both of y'all would talk about yes, I love that competition. But there is a way to engage respectfully when you're talking to people. You don't downgrade, you don't denigrate, you don't name call.
I want to hear from Tom as well, and kind of how you feel about all of this. I know you mentioned that you're also a registered Republican.
Did so when I turned 18, been voting for those many years. And I don't believe I have ever intentionally voted a straight ticket. What David was saying about looking at the values, looking at who the person is, looking at what they stand for, looking at what the policies are that that individual happens to be going for, that's what I would seek to try and do. As a pastor, I like the concept of integrity. However, as I think about it, integrity can have a couple of different ways of looking at it. A person can have integrity, as most of us think about it, as in they seek to do the right thing. You know, they have integrity. Another way of looking at integrity is that the individual is integrated within him or herself, whereas you see what you get. You hear what you get. And there are times where the person has integrity within self that does no way jive with what I would think of as what integrity really means. And so I like integrity in a person, but I like integrity as we as a society might consider it. I believe kind of what Doug was saying. Yes, I'm a registered Republican, but it's been quite a while since I felt that the Republican Party is what I bought into originally when I registered. They have moved. I don't believe that I have.
Good.
Yeah. Wow.
I think it was Tom that said something earlier, and I want to bring that back up, where even though parties run to get, the Congress, let's say the Congress, the Senate, and then, of course, President, they run to get their team in charge. And in one sense, that's good. But in another sense, it's not so good, because as you mentioned about how the governor has a majority, which means whatever he wants to do, he's got the power to get it done. It's good that you can get things done, but then it becomes a negative if you're just getting things done to serve your own purpose, right? But I heard it said earlier about true government and governing has bipartisan decisions. We may be in different parties. My party might be in charge, but I need your buy-in to it, or we're working to have a bipartisan decision. That's the way government should be. Maybe it was that way in the time, but I know it's not that way now. And so before, there was always someone on the other side that says, yes, I'm willing to hear what you have to say, and I'll partner with you so we can get a bill across, so on and so forth, for the betterment of the country, or the betterment of the community. And I think that's vitally important. And that's where we talk again about diversity of thoughts, diversity of opinion, right? That's how it should be. I should have an opinion. You should have an opinion. We come together, strategize, and see what's the best decision for the community. And if you're in charge this time, next time I might be in charge, but then we flip it so that we can still have bipartisan decisions. So that's being independent. That's kind of like what I look for. I'm in the middle, but I want to see both sides work together for the common goal.
You just heard from Melbourne resident and registered Republican Tom Unrath and David Walker, a registered independent who lives in the St. Cloud area. They're part of a small group of people from Central Florida Public Media's coverage area that we brought together to learn more about how people are feeling about the elections this year. The conversation was recorded before Tuesday night's debate. That's it for The Wrap. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media with assistance from News Director Latoya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.